Got instruments, for example, to put on the edge of a rod, a ramrod, to get lead stuck in the barrel of a rifle, and such things as that. I've also got a few coins in there. Generally, Possible's bag for a mountain man is everything that's possible you can bring that fits. Yes, ma'am.
They call you Old Greenwood. How old are you?
Well, right now, 83 summers. So I've been around a while. And was past the age of 80 during that whole rescuing the Donner Party and my first trip on the California Trail. So they called me Old Greenwood from 1809 on. Yes.
Is the horseshoe pass that you created around the overpass that the Donners took, is that 85 miles without water? That's called the Greenwood Pass?
No, we were thinking the Greenwood Cutoff.
The Greenwood Pass.
The Greenwood Cutoff is from South Pass, and what travelers had to do, what pioneers had to do once they crossed the Rocky Mountains in South Pass, was to proceed southwest to Fort Bridger, which is in Wyoming country, and then they'd have to go back up northwest to Fort Hall, Pocatello. They had to make a V. But my cutoff doesn't have any water on it, unfortunately. Goes straight from South Pass, straight across, cuts that top of that V, and knocks off more than 100 miles from the trip to Fort Hall. Donner Party, when they took that shortcut, they did go down that V to Fort Bridger, but not back up to Fort Hall. They kept going to the south end of the Great Salt Lake, and then across an 80-mile desert, and then into what is now Nevada, and then across to the Ruby Mountains and down the south end of the Ruby Mountains, and then back up to the Humboldt River, which had 150 miles and maybe 3 weeks to their trip. Yes, ma'am.
Did you ever reunite with your wife and the other children?
Batchika died in Missouri. I did bring the kids back out in 1848, just in time for the gold rush. And we lived in Napa, and then the two older boys got land grants elsewhere, and have not remarried. Don't need to. No way to. I would ever do any better than Batchika. And I know I've said some bad things about Indians. Those are Rickarees and Blackfeet. The rest of the tribes are fine folks, especially the Crow. I always got along with them, but nobody got along with the Rickarees or the Blackfeet. They're just ornery. Yes, sir.
Want to tell us a story about that Batchika taking you down the river?
Oh, from my tooth?
Your eyes. Your eyes.
From my eyes and my teeth, too. Yeah, that was the last time I was in St. Louis. I was going blind on a farm, and Batchika insisted we go see a doctor, a regular doctor. She had already brought me the Indian one. Couldn't do much, and brought me down to St. Louis and got my eyes fixed there. So civilization is good for something. That's what I said about Batchika. She was, when she got an idea in her head, she did it. I told her I ain't going to St. Louis. Next thing I know, I was in a canoe. Yes, sir.
You said when you were 18, you built a man. What were the circumstances there?
Well, he was what happened was, I was up getting breakfast early in the morning, 6 o'clock, and I heard screams outside. It was our servant woman. And some man I'd never seen before was dragging her across the field and heading for the creek. That was our property line. Also, that would be the county line. And he was dragging her as though he was kidnapped her. And the servant woman was 22 years old, and this fellow was probably, I don't know, 40. And so I grabbed my rifle, went out, told him to stop, and he paid no mind to me, and I put a musket ball through his head. He stopped there. But it turned out the fellow was the sheriff from the next county. My daddy had borrowed some money, and he put up the servant woman as collateral. And when the man that lent him the money complained he didn't pay him back quick enough, the sheriff was coming to seize property, in other words, this woman. But I didn't know all that, I just saw a kidnapping happen. And so I shot the man, and nobody much liked that sheriff fellow, but I mean, they had to keep up appearances, and so there was a warrant out for my arrest in the next county, and I had to get out of there.
Where was the little playa that was in the dock there?
I'm sorry?
The little playa, you were talking about going over the little playa.
I'll Playa, T-O,
Oh, I thought it
no,
was.
Playa. It's the Spanish word for beach.
So,
In other words, a desert with no vegetation.
right, like Black Rock.
Black Rock Desert, yes.
Is that what?
There are playas all over
Oh, there are.
that. Yeah, it's not Black Rock, just black. This one is over 40 miles in, and it's between the Humboldt Sink and the Truck River. And there's no water on that except a hot spring in the middle. And Jim Kleiman, who was that mountain man that warned James Reed, Kleiman was going east 46 with his dog. And his dog spotted the water. And before Kleiman could stop him, he ran and jumped into that hot spring. Kleiman, in his diary, when a man dies, Kleiman gave him a sentence. When that dog died, on 3 days. And I can understand that. It was his only companion for years.
And how do you spell the guy, naked guy, U-glass?
I'm sorry, how do I?
What's the spelling of his last name, the guy that got naked all the way back to,
You glass or Polk? C-O-U-L-T-E-R.
huh?
John C-O-U-L-T-E-R.
No, the other-
He's the one who found Yellowstone. People said he was crazy. He came back from Yellowstone country and said there was boiling mud pots and geysers of hot water that went off at a certain time during the day. They said, that's nice, John. Did you fall on your head in the wilderness? And they called it Coulter's Hell. It was Yellowstone.
But he wasn't the naked guy that they left.
Coulter was, they were both. Well, you glass was naked. Coulter was stripped down by the Blackfeet. That was first order. And then Hugh Glass was the one mauled by the Brits. But I think he was allowed to keep his pants. G-L-A-S-S. H-U-G-H. Hugh Glass. Now, he's pretty famous. He had adventures after that. He got captured by pirates and Indians, and all kinds of things happened to Hugh Glass. I think he died when he was 35, but he had a life that had enough in it for somebody that was 150. But he's one of the most fascinating mountain men, I think, that ever lived. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, did you stay in California?
I stayed in California, ain't dead yet. I'm probably done God's wagons, though. It's enough just telling tales of the Lake of Gold keeps me busy. It's a lot easier than guiding wagons. Yes, ma'am.
You said you were familiar with the Snake Indians. Are you talking about the Shoshone of Wyoming?
Yeah, Snake Indians is the same thing as Shoshone. They are called the Snake, and I'm not sure who called them the Shoshone, and maybe that's their own designation, but I've heard it both ways, and mountain men call them snakes.
All right.
The northern Shoshone people, yeah. Yes?
So since you didn't read or write, how do you know about you? Is that your kids, they document you?
How do I know about what?
How do we know about you since you didn't write? Is that your children that document?
I suppose. I didn't write nothing. But I didn't figure you knew about me in the first place.
All right, it is time to introduce the scholar behind the character. Frank X. Mullen. has been a newspaperman for 40 years and is the author of the Donner Party Chronicles, a history of the Donner Party and other nonfiction works. Last year, Nevada Press Association inducted Frank into the Nevada Newspaper Hall of Fame, and he was named 2021 Robert Licksalt Distinguished Writer by the Reynolds School of Journalism, University of Nevada, and the Nevada Humanities Committee. He retired from newspapers in 2013, but in 2020 he was hired to revive the Reno News and Review, which had shut down during the pandemic closures. He brought the paper back into print last month after 2 years surviving online. Frank has been performing in Chautauqua since 1998. His other characters include Babe Ruth, Albert Einstein, John C. Fremont, and Henry VIII. Please help me welcome Frank X. Mullen. So we have some time if you'd like to ask Frank X. Mullen any questions.
The lady back there had a question for Caleb, which he couldn't answer. How do we know about Caleb Greenwood? He couldn't read or write. Well, he's in the fur company records. Several fur company records. He was getting paid for when he was a company man. He was getting paid, and then when he was a free trapper, he was getting paid for his pelts. And so he's in those company records. He's also in Pioneer Diaries of the Townsend Stephen Murky Party, and also other diaries. For example, Edwin Bryant's What I Saw in California. Bryant came across with the Donner Party early on, and then went ahead on muleback at Fort Laramie. Bryant was a newspaper man, worked for both the Louisville Courier, and I believe he was a founder of the Louisville Journal. But he had consumption. He had lung problems, TB, and so the doctor said, you need to go for a really long walk, someplace where the air is dry. So he actually took a 2,000-mile walk, and half of that was on muleback, for his health. And Bryant wrote a book called What I Saw in California, and it contains probably the best and the longest profile of Caleb, because Bryant ran into Caleb. And being, a newspaper guy, he did an interview and did a personality profile. And so we know a lot about that. The only biography of Caleb was done in 1939 by a guy named Charles Kelly, who also wrote stuff about the Donner Party wagons. But Kelly's biography was kind of helter-skelter, wasn't very good. But Dale Morgan, who was the dean of Western Trail Scholars at the time, Dale Morgan saw it and said, "You really got something here, but you got to do it a lot better than this." So Morgan basically worked with Kelly and did more research on it and got it together, and it was reprinted under both bylines, under both authors, Dale L. Morgan and Charles Kelly. And that's the only biography of Caleb that exists. And the weird thing is, when I started researching this character, I found out that a lot of that biography is dead wrong. Because it went with family lore of some of his family that lived in California. And I've since found relatives of his in Texas. And they had the family Bible. And the biggest thing they got wrong, and then Caleb, by the way, got it wrong himself. He claimed he was born in 1863. The family Bible says he was born in 1763. 1783 is when he was born. 1763 was when his daddy was born. And so, but Caleb went around telling everybody in 1844 and 1845 and 1846 that he was in his 80s. And he swore up and down. And I think the reason was, a man in his 60s leading a wagon train is pretty impressive. But then again, there were members of the Donner Party that were in their 60s. George Donner himself was over the age of 60. But a man in his 80s, as leading a wagon. And that makes more sense from the point of view of him going into the wilderness with named Lisa in 1809. If he was born in 1863, he spent 46 years before he went into the wilderness the first time. You know, as a cub trapper, 46 years old. But if he was born in 1780s, he would be 26 when he went into the war, which makes a lot more sense. And so there were a number of things like that. I was starting to write a monograph for the Nevada Historical Society on that and other aspects of his life that I found out that don't jive with the book. And then along came the pandemic and being unretired. And, that's on hold. But I've got a ton of research on that. The genealogy of the families and so forth. But he's a fascinating guy. And he really was quite a storyteller according to all accounts. And he also didn't like the pioneers. He considered them peas in the butt. You know, I mean, he was hard to deal with because they were like, it was like, I've got to lead these idiots. You know, they can barely tie their shoes. You know, I'm going to be wet nursing them. You know, that was his attitude. You know, but quite a character, and everybody knew him. I mean, he literally did. As I said, he knew Jim Bridger and Sean Smith, and you know, you look at, one story I didn't tell, I kind of skipped over, was the Great Salt Lake. 1824, Jim Bridger and a couple other people go down to the Great Salt Lake from Bear Valley. And they're like, oh my God, it's salt. It's an arm of the Pacific. And that jived with what the Spanish explorers said, because they didn't get very far into the Great Basin. Either from the south with Francisco Garces or the ones that came in from the Utah side. At the time, in 1776, they were looking for a route that would connect their colonies to New Mexico, California and New Mexico. They were looking for some kind of a route there, an easy trail. But they didn't get too far in the Great Basin. It was too forbidden. But what they did do was talk to the Goshoot Indians, and the Goshoots told them, oh yeah, there's a big bay of salt down there, you know, just south of us. And they thought it was an arm of the Pacific too. And if you look at some of the maps that were produced in the late early 1800s, there is a river that runs from the called the Buenaventura, that runs from the Great Salt Lake all the way to the Bay of San Francisco. A straight line. You could dip a canoe in the Salt Lake and paddle all the way to the bay. And it was believed for quite a while. But in 26, Jim Bridger and some other guys got in bull boats. And they circumnavigated the Great Salt Lake and found it had no outlet. But it was a good story anyway. And it was actually on maps. And maps before that showed California as an island. Some of them. And they were drawn in Europe. They didn't know, you know, they had kind of a vague idea of Baja California and thought that might be an island because of the bay there, next to that peninsula. But old maps are kind of fun. But Caleb couldn't read a map. He scratched in the dirt. He was illiterate. A lot of the things I said, he wouldn't have known how to spell playa. He could read, he could spell and write his own name. Because he had to do that. He could do arithmetic. Because you had to be able to, do figures to be a mountain man, because you had to figure out if they're cheating you or not. And so he had very limited writing skills and could not read. So we don't know a hell of a lot about him. And I think he mentioned the Penny Dreadful novels. That's how some of the mountain men got to be famous, because there were Buntline, a fellow named Buntline did a lot of these, throwaway novels basically on newsprint, and so made a lot of people famous, like Kit Carson. Ned Buntline made Kit Carson. All these stories and stuff, and every little kid in the East knew Kit Carson because of these penny novels that were popular at the time. But nobody heard of Caleb. And they did name the golf course after him, though. He was quite a golf aficionado. But yeah, old Greenwood. And it's funny, when they named that, I was still working at the Gazette-Journal, and Bill O'Driscoll, the business writer, came over and showed me the press release that what they were going to name the development and the golf course up there. And he said, "I'll bet you're the only one within 100 miles that knows why they might name this." People think it's a green, and that's something to do with golf, but they did name Schallenberger Ridge too after Moses, so he at least got some. I know people would complain when I would do Donner Party research for the book. People would say, they failed, and they named everything after them. They were failures. Half of them died. And then Townsend Stevens Murphy Party got to California with 2 more people than they started out with, because 2 babies were born on the way. But yet nothing up here at the time was named after anybody from the Townsend Stevens Murphy Party. Now it is Schallenberger Ridge.
There is a town in Greenwood too.
Yeah, there's a school, Caleb Greenwood Elementary in California, and there used to be a lot more things named after him and his sons, but they kind of fell by the wayside. Even the Greenwood Cutoff, because of a mapmaker's mistake, is known as the Sublet Cutoff. So he didn't even get to keep his name on that. Yeah, he died probably around 1850, so he didn't live very long into the gold rush. And the location of his grave is unknown.
So you would have been about 70. If he was born in 1783 and died in 1858, he would be about 70.
Well, yeah, when he died, and 70, not 90, which would have, yeah. Although it was much more impressive, it's Greenwood's 86. Look at him. And so he liked that. It's one of the few cases where someone lies to be old. No, that's a different deal.
I'm sorry, but
The Horseshoe Trail to avoid Truckee Canyon, that goes through from Verdi. If you're in Verdi and you go up Bridge Street, Verdi, they got that lovely 1-lane bridge. If you've ever seen it, you got to be really careful. Nobody's coming the other way. You cross that 1-lane bridge, and then you go up Joel Valley Road from Bridge Street. When you get to the border of California and Nevada, there's a monument there that's part of the Von Schmidt survey. Von Schmidt was the surveyor who surveyed the diagonal. How Nevada's got that diagonal thing? One of his original markers, he didn't put them up, they put them up afterwards. He was just a surveyor. But it's this obelisk, like a Cleopatra's needle, and it's got a base with the longitude and latitude and directions of the compass and all this great stuff. And surrounding that are these interpretive signs that are wonderfully well written. I know. But yeah, the Nevada County Harbor years ago, they said, "Hey, I heard you know about this road here." Yeah, I do. But, the rest of the sign. No byline. Yes.
Did Greenwood and Temple communicate once they were both in California?
That's what I've seen. I'm sorry?
Did Beckworth and Greenwood communicate once they were both in California?
Did Beckworth and Greenwood?
Communicate back and forth?
I don't think so. As a matter of fact, the Beckworth Trail is over by Portola. That's the Beckworth Trail. He blazed the trail in the 1850s that came out of Truckee Canyon and then headed north of the Donner Pass. And as a matter of fact, this pass wasn't used much past the 1850s, or at least the Truckee River Trail wasn't used much because they moved further south, Carson Pass and Walker Pass, which is good because all those immigrants were destroying everything on the Truckee River path there. They're wrecking the riverbed and really doing a lot of damage. So in the 1850s, when the main body of immigrants moved south, that was a break for the Truckee River.
Is there a grave for Greenwood?
I'm sorry?
Is there a grave for Caleb?
There is no grave for Caleb, no. No one knows where he's buried. Some of his descendants are, that is well known.
But his kids were sort of any
No, none of his, I mean, there may be some of his other kids, but John and Britton, I think John's grave maybe no, but not Britton's. Britton was the one who froze his toes up in the Donner Party.
Was Beckwith Pass along Highway 78 part of the trail system, a route system?
Beckwith Pass was part of the immigration, part of the immigration system, sure. It's a lot easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's longer, but it's a lot easier than the Donner Pass or even Wilbur Pass or some of the other High Sierra passes. And you can see why, he piloted that for that reason. Well, a lot of trails in Nevada, including the Applegate-Lassen Trail, which goes to the Black Rock Desert, which was really ill-advised, as ill-advised as the...
Yeah, well, last one was pretty.
Yeah.
It killed so many children.
Mhm.
It killed a lot of people.
Yep.
So that way.
And if you go on that trail today, High Rock Canyon, you can still see the names of the pioneers carved in High Rock Canyon. It's now part of a wilderness study area, so you can go up there. It's not closed off.
Kid Carson has a bad reputation.
Kit Carson has a bad reputation in terms of killing Indians. Yeah, and he later regretted it. I'm told. I'm not a Kit Carson expert, but he even a lot of the tribes today loathe, hearing the name of Kit Carson because of his exploits in killing Indians. Yes.
I forgot what I was going to say, but one thing I want to say, were you always interested in history growing up?
Question was I always interested in history growing up? Answer is yes. When I was a kid, I grew up in New York and New Jersey, and I was interested, I'd go to the Hudson River and imagine the Lenni Lenape, the Delaware people, in their canoes along the Hudson River. And I would imagine the volcanoes, which is not history but more geology, the volcanoes that caused the Palisade Cliffs. It's all basalt. And it was a basalt flow that came down there, and now it's a sheer cliff. And I would imagine Henry Hudson in his ship, the Half Moon, coming up the Hudson River. And so growing up, I was always very interested in history. And once I could read, I read a lot of history books without having to be told to do so. Yeah, and also interested in writing, and so gravitated toward journalism.
That's great.
Which I'm kind of glad. I know a lot of people that have to read history and you teach, or you can work for the Forest Service as a historian or something, but very few jobs. And journalism is now in that spot itself. But when I was getting out of school, it was the guys or people I graduated with that had history degrees had a much harder time than journalism grads. Now it may be the opposite. But, yes.
There was a splinter group from the Students' Council Murky Party that proceeded the Lake
Yeah, it wasn't really a splinter group. We asked about a splinter group of the Townsend Stevens Murphy Party that went to Lake Tahoe. That was members of the party. It was one of the Murphy boys and his wife, and there were 6 of them on horseback, men and women. And so they split off, and they were the first non-Indian people to be at the shore of Lake Tahoe. A year prior to that, Fremont and Kit Carson had spotted Lake Tahoe from a mountaintop. And they also found the Truckee River out by Wadsworth. But they didn't know the river they saw running out of Tahoe was the same one they saw running into Pyramid Lake, earlier on that trip. But Kit Carson and Fremont are credited with being the first non-Indian people to spot it. Obviously the Washoe people knew about it for millennia and lived on it. But the groups of 6 people from Townsend Stevens Murphy Party actually got there. And they split up quite a bit. They split up, you know, with the 5 wagons going ahead and even the 6 back here with the 3 men and all that. They were, you know, versatile, whatever it took.
How did they get to Sutter's Fort?
Hmm?
The 6 horseback riders, how did they get to Sutter's Fort?
I don't know. Once they got to Tahoe, they did get to Sutter's Fort, and I'm not sure which pass they used. They didn't have a diary with them, for one thing. I mean, there's no diary of that part of the journey, so I'm not quite sure, but they did get there. Do you know?
History records that they took what's now called McKinney Creek, which is down by Mullen. They went down the west shore and found the passageway, which led to the Yukon to the American River. In 21 days after they split from the rest of the party.
So they did
They
get
hit the Sutter's Fort.
that route. Okay. Yeah, I'm not a Townsend Stevens Murphy Party guy. I learned about it at Church's Greenwood, but Donner Party is my main thing.
So
Diana?
what would Kennedy Greenwood run into Jedediah Smith, since Jedediah Smith is so far north? What would Kennedy Greenwood run into Jedediah Smith since he was so far north?
Why did Caleb,
What would he run into, what would Caleb run into Jedediah Smith? Because Jedediah Smith was so far north in California.
oh, no. I mean, they saw each other at Rendezvous.
Rendezvous?
Yeah.
So what year would that be?
I don't know, I'd have to check my list. There were, between 1825 and 1837 or 8, there were rendezvous. And most of them were at Bear River or Green River, but there were some that were outliers like at Jackson Hole and stuff like that. So the mountain men would see each other
Right.
at the rendezvous and catch up on what was going on. Also catch up on who wasn't there anymore. You know, what happened to Charbonneau? Oh, you didn't hear, you know, that kind of thing. But that was the place they communicated and some of these guys didn't live very long. Jed Smith did. He was killed on the Santa Fe Trail. And Hugh Glass died when he was like 35. And a lot of them didn't make it, but some like Greenwood, you know, he lived to be 70 and claimed to be 90. Yeah.
One last
Oh,
question.
one more? Yes, sir.
Just interested in your buckskin there. What kind of research?
Where'd I get the buckskin? This was made for me by a woman on the Crow Reservation in Montana. And I had met her when Susan and I went up to see the Custer Battlefield. And we stopped off with Crow Res. And so I got her business card. She does buckskins, you know, for mountain men reenactments and that kind of thing. And so when I got home, I sent her my measurements. And this was 30 years ago, or no, about 25 years ago now, I guess. And I sent her, you know, my measurements, and she got me this in about a month. And it's brain tan deer hunting. And I had to leave this out in my backyard for a couple of years because you can see how new this looks. The whole thing looked new for years. You couldn't kill it. And I would wear it camping and sleep in it. And finally, I just took the shirt and just put it on the back of a Adirondack chair in the backyard and forgot about it for a while. And then turned it over so the back would get, you know, some exposure. But it looked too darn new for years. And I didn't quite give the pants the same, I think you would see the pants look a lot newer, but these were also weathered too. Very hard to kill, these things. And they don't breathe. You know, it's like a scuba diving suit or something. They don't breathe. And when they opened the Elko, the museum out in Elko, the Trails Museum, I was out there to give the keynote performance at the Elko Museum, and it was a brand new museum, and the air conditioning system did not work. And I was just, I had a Radio Shack clock so I could see what time it was, so I wouldn't go over in the talk. but it also displayed the temperature. And so I had the clock, you know, on the ground, I'd look at 103. But they've since gotten the air conditioning fixed. Yes, ma'am.
Why the fringe?
Fringe, basically you could use this for stuff. You could pull one off and use it to tie things. But it's also for the motion. It's the style of it. It's from the Plains Indians. It just looks cool as you're on a horse. It's a fashion thing. And also it wicks. If you're soaked in a rainstorm, it wicks helps wick the moisture. And you use them for, you pull one off and you use it to tie something or whatever. But fringe was big on all kinds of buckskin items for most of the Plains Indians. And then as the mountain men came up, they adopted those kinds of styles and also had Indian women run up some clothes for them. And wound up wearing, you know, some of those mountain men, like Caleb, became more Indian than the Indians. You know, I mean, they would want to learn so much about the way they, you know, dealt with the environment and stuff. It was almost cultish the way they would, you know, insist on doing things a certain way because that's the way the Pawnee do it, you know, or whatever. They were very understanding of the fact that these people did not last for hundreds or thousands of years without knowing what to do out in the wilderness. They respected the lessons they learned. Unlike some of the mechanisms of civilization, where they just said they're savages, they're ignorant savages. The mountain men were like, you, they're our teachers. They know what they're doing. You know, that's if we want to survive, we better do what they're doing because they are far more intelligent in this world than we are. And I think that was one big difference between the mountain men, their relationship, and, you know, people, explorers who went out there, or pioneers who went out there just looking down on the Indians, thinking they were primitive in some way. And they were actually so well adapted. Especially here, they would call the California and Nevada Indians diggers because they would always see them digging for acorns or digging in the desert for roots or whatever, and really despised California and Nevada Indians because they didn't have the nobility and the fashion, really, of the Sioux and the Plains Indians who were, you know, well dressed and had, you know, war paint and all that. The desert Indians were scraping for a living, and they just looked down on them for that. Which is why so many Indians, I think, were killed in California. They'd say, oh, they're just diggers, sure. Whereas they wouldn't do that on the Plains, in the Sioux or the Cheyenne. They'd wind up with their scalps on somebody's watch. But here they just really treated them worse than the Indians they had met on the way over.
All right, Frank X. Mullen, everybody. SierraStateParks.org for more information, to donate, and to get involved with more of our events. So thank you guys so much. We'll see you next time.
And to see if you pick one up. A lot of copies out there.
Thank you so much.